for too many families at the moment. But I think it's important to stress that we want to get this transition right from where we are to where we need to be. So we're investing up front to do that. The current system, in terms of the ability of people to apply for education, health and care plans, will continue until 2030 is when that will start to change. But we're not going to wait for that to start investing in more support. So I announced yesterday £4 billion of support that will go into schools, but that will go into specialist support in areas like speech and language.
Yep.
The transition that is talked about is that when we get to 29-30, ahead of the new system coming in 2030, children who are going to make that shift from primary into secondary will be reviewed against the new system. Annual review should take place already for children who have EHCPs. That doesn't always happen, but that is what should happen. But that is a number of years down the line where we will have invested significantly to transform the system so it's one that is unrecognisable from what parents see now and a very different system into the future. And there will be a shift from that system I think that parents recognise isn't working to a much better and stronger system. But I have heard from parents like Sarah, like you, the importance of making sure there is clear accountability, the ability to put things right when parents are questioning decisions and want to challenge that. And I would encourage parents to have a look at the consultation that we launched yesterday. It is a consultation and we want to continue that conversation and make sure that people respond.
So there will be a tribunal?
Yes.
OK. I note that in relevance to what Sarah's been asking, you were on the news last night and Sarah Corker from ITV News asked you twice, can you give the guarantee no child who is getting support will lose it? You seemed unable to answer it. Can you now give me that guarantee? No child who is currently getting support will lose that support.
So that's the transition point about primary to secondary that was being asked about.
You can't give me that guarantee, can you?
So I will absolutely answer your question directly.
OK, go ahead.
We will make sure that children's needs are reviewed and that the right support is put in place. So all children will have an individual support plan, all children with special educational needs. That will mean more children than right now who the only way to get that support is through an education, health and care plan. Where we make that transition from primary to secondary, so that's children who are currently in year 2, who in 2029-30 will be starting that transition process to secondary school. Of the children right now who currently have an education, health and care plan, we estimate that 1 in 8 will move on to an individual support plan rather than being in the EHCP process. But there is. What
will happen to the other 7?
They will get an individual. They will retain their EHCP.
I see. So there will be some children who move to, or 1 in 8 will go to the ISP.
That's our best estimate. But I should just say this is not a number we're chasing. There's not a target. There is no. We're not seeking to reduce the numbers. Mm-hmm. We are trying to deliver a system that provides better and more timely support for children.
And so, again, the guarantee, no child who is getting support will lose it. You can say that, you can guarantee that?
I can, because they will get support under the new system, that will involve individual support plans and that will see schools better able to deliver targeted support, but they will get a plan that is backed up with legal rights associated, legally underpinned rights associated with that.
Let's get a quick response from Sarah. Do you want to come back to the Education Secretary? Sarah?
I would just say that individual support plans are decided, I believe, by teachers. And so what you're doing is pitting parents against teachers without that legal backup of an independent EHCP process. Response
from you, if you would, Secretary of State.
So I do, of course, recognise the value of education, health and care plans. That's why we've said that they will remain within the current system. And there does need to be rights of redress for parents when things don't work well. But individual support plans, there will be routes for parents to seek resolution where they disagree. And for example, where parents are unhappy with the outcome, where they've complained about that, the complaint will be dealt with in part by an independent person on that panel who is a SEND expert that will be able to look at that too. And there will be then the route for parents to take that further beyond that.
Sarah, good luck with your son. I note, Secretary of State, that the assistance will only be provided for children with the most complex needs. Can you define most complex?
So what we published yesterday alongside the consultation was the shape of the profiles around specialist provision packages. So they will be nationally defined. We will have experts, both health and education experts, will work with us to define what that provision should look like. And there will be national standards. So part of what parents will see at the moment when they go through this system is that there is huge variation depending on where you live. And we will put in place nationally defined standards and specialist provision packages that will respond to the needs of children who have complex
my earlier caller's
challenges.
son, who's non-verbal autistic,
Yes.
does that class as most complex?
It's hard to comment on an individual. I'll do my best to answer that question. It will not be based on diagnosis. It will be based on need. So autistic children can have a range of need, and sometimes it can overlap with other areas for other disability.
So non-verbal autistic is not complex?
No, it is. I'm just saying I don't unfortunately know the full details of Sarah's 3-year-old, but what I would say is to look at we published yesterday a list of what those draft profiles would look like. We're going to consult further on that. We will bring forward, through the work of an expert panel, nationally defined standards that will set out the shape of that. I want to make sure that the needs of children, where those needs are particularly complex, are met more quickly, but met more consistently.
But surely any child who's non-verbal is complex, Secretary of State?
There is a complexity there.
What does that mean? I mean, would you agree, if a child is non-verbal, that's complex?
Some children can take longer to learn to speak, and many children experience speech and language difficulties. That is one of the biggest growth areas that we've seen. But often, if the right support is put in place quickly, then children can make progress. For the children who don't make progress, and where they have profound and complex need, look, my intention behind all of this is to make it easier for people like Sarah to get the support that their children need. But there is too much variation. It might be one thing in Basingstoke, it could be another thing in Birmingham.
Yes, I understand.
And a more national approach, where we have the best evidenced approach as well about what works to support children who are facing those kinds of challenges. Again, there is huge variation in the approach that teachers and health staff will take.
But if you feel this so keenly, why is it taking so many years to actually put in place? And figure of EHCPs will rise until 2930, then by 2035, fewer children. I mean, this is 4 or 5 years away, Secretary of State. Why the delay?
Well, the balance here is that at one level, we've obviously got lots of parents like Sarah who are worried about the change that we are seeking to bring. So we need to manage this carefully and properly. But we're investing up front so that by the time we get towards 2030...
But we want a world war by the time this will actually take effect.
Sadly, it does take time to make change of this scale happen.
Fight a world war to change this, turn this around, Secretary of State? Are you seriously telling my listeners it takes that long? 2035? That's 9 years.
Well, no, the change starts from 2030.
I know, but by 2035 is when the numbers start to come down, is what I'm reading.
Yes. I mean, I would hope that the numbers would come down more quickly because of the investment we're putting into early family support. But I'm not chasing a number. This is not about cost-cutting. This is not about reducing the numbers in an arbitrary and unfair way. We are going to see the numbers continue to increase. That's what we anticipate will happen. But that's because the system we've got at the moment means that in order for parents to get support, they have to get that EHCP. We need to change the system so that we support families and children more quickly without the need for that fight.
Yours is an all-encompassing brief as Education Secretary. I think we're going to the other end of the age scale now. James in Colchester, we're going to talk about university, I understand. James, you're on the radio. Your question. Good morning.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes, James.
So I borrowed £45,000 on a Plan 2 loan and graduated in 2018. I now owe over £69,000. In the last year, I paid back £3,700, but £5,000 was added in interest. So even though I'm paying off my debt, it's still growing. If that trend continues, I'll repay almost double what I borrowed over the next 22 years and still never clear the balance. Does the Education Secretary accept that this is fundamentally unfair, and will she commit to ending the punishing RPI plus 3% interest rate and reviewing the frozen repayment thresholds?
And I have to say, James, you're one of around 5.8 million people who took out these Plan 2, as they're called, loans. Secretary of State, can you give that guarantee?
So we are going to continue to look at this. I do recognise what James has set out. I would just add, in addition to what he'd said, that at the end of 30 years, that will be written off in full. So those who have taken on Plan 2 loans... That's, yes,
yeah,
it gets written off at the end of that, period.
Respectfully, so you and I and every taxpayer pays it.
Yeah. So that is part of
that's not good either, is it?
Well, this is part of the problem with the system.
Well, surely the problem is this young man took a £42,000. He's now at 69. I mean, he can't even cover the interest. I appreciate you didn't bring this in, but, I mean, for instance, why not go to CPI? Can you give us that pledge now?
No, I can't. I mean,
why?
I will answer that. As you say, we didn't bring this system in. It operated from 2012 to 2023. the part of the challenge with reforming the student finance system is that whilst it can often seem superficially attractive to do things like changing the interest rate, it doesn't always have the desired effect in terms of making the system fairer, particularly for less well-off students. It's a really complex system. It's, evolved over time. It's not a system that I would have put in place, but we are where we are. We are going to look at if there's anything that we can do on this. Of course, we keep it open and under review. We've increased the threshold for repayment this year. It's then frozen in subsequent years. But I do recognise the pressure that many people who went to university during this period are still facing.
To talk later this week with the Prime Minister and the Chancellor to say, look, come on, we've got to move from RPI to CPI, just as a gesture of where we want to go. Why can't we move to that?
Well, that will happen over time anyway, because everything is moving towards a measure of CPI. But the challenge with this is that the way the interest rate operates means that those who earn more pay back more. So higher earners in this system repay more because they've had the benefit of university education and are earning more. So there can sometimes be unintended consequences. I know, but there are sometimes unintended consequences of making some of those changes that don't necessarily make it fairer.
You're aware of the level of anger this is causing?
Yes, I am.
You are. All right. OK. James, good luck. Thank you. We're staying on a related question. I think Joel is in Egham. Joel, you're on the radio. Hello. Yours is a slightly different take on university tuition. Go ahead.
Good morning. How you doing?
I'm good. Your question to Bridget Phillipson.
My question is, what policies are we going to bring in to help graduates like me? Because I've been a graduate for just under 2 years now. I graduated in 24 summer. Mm-hmm. I'm in 49,000.
What did you study, Joel?
I did marketing.
Marketing. What did you hope to get? What kind of job did you want?
So I wanted to go into assistant and then hopefully get into managing, and then consulting is the...
I want to talk the jobless side, but just out of interest, are you in debt?
Yes, 49,000.
And that grows each year, does it?
It does. So I was looking at it last night, and I've made £1,600 worth of payments towards my debt.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But it has gone up by close to 4,000.
OK, let's stay if we may. And I'm sorry to hear that, Joel, but I want to get the Secretary of State for Education. You'll be aware we're talking vacancies for university leavers fell 45% in January compared with a year earlier. Why aren't these kids and folk getting jobs?
A part of it, my kind of best estimation of some of this, is we are seeing some quite big shifts in the labour market, particularly in response to areas like technology and use of AI, and that is changing behaviours of some of the big kind of graduate recruiters in terms of the people they need and where they need them. I do think that is a part of it. And, Joel's question about what we're going to do to help people in his position, there are a number of things. So, we're freezing rail fares to make it easier for commuters so that they're not...
Well, how's it helping if he hasn't got a job? He hasn't got anywhere to go.
You have to travel to interviews most of the time these days, but I hope that Joel is successful in getting a good job soon. We also want to make it easier for young people to get on the housing ladder, building more homes, investing more also in social and affordable housing, investing in social and affordable housing.
He's got another £3,400 in debt over the year. How can he possibly take on a mortgage?
Well, I really hope that Joel is successful in his job hunt, and when he is able to do...
Vacancies for university leavers fell 45%.
Yeah, so I really hope that Joel is successful in getting that job, and when he does, I hope he is able to see the benefit of having a more stable economy where interest rates are coming down, and that means that people's mortgages will also come down, and it's cheaper to get a mortgage.
Secretary of State,
we're building more homes and more social and affordable homes too.
700,000 graduates are claiming benefits. Should everyone go to university?
No, I don't think everybody should go to university.
Shouldn't we be encouraging people not to go to university and possibly take up a trade? What can we do in that skills area?
So we are massively expanding what we're doing around apprenticeships for young people, also other routes into high-quality technical and vocational education. That's absolutely essential. I don't think it's one or the other. For me, it's about young people having good options, good pathways, the choices that are right for them.
Well, they'll be doing their revision for their A-levels soon, won't it, with Easter around the corner? How does a young person determine whether they should go to university or whether they should go into a college and be a tradesman or tradeswoman, an engineer, a plumber, a hairdresser? How do they determine that?
It's a big choice. It is a big choice. And they will do that through speaking to their parents, speaking to their college or school.
Well, who would want to get into debt? Who would want to get into 60 grand's worth of debt with no job
because graduates still go on to earn more across their lifetime. So going to university is an investment in your future. I don't think it's the only route for young people. And we've had a real focus on expanding technical and vocational education. But I would just say that sometimes what I hear, particularly from opposition politicians, is that they want to deny to young people the chance to go to university when they themselves have been able to benefit from that. I think for me, it's about genuine choice, and also not assuming that just because you're from a certain community or a certain background or from a certain family, that should determine what you go on to do. And high quality careers guidance and work experience is part of how we allow young people to really consider the options that are out there for them.
Let's go to good luck, Joel, with your job hunting. Dan in Great Yarmouth, you're through to Bridget Phillipson. Go ahead, Dan. Morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. We're a mainstream primary school in Great Yarmouth, and we have our own complex needs provision on site. We have 45 out of 450 children with EHCPs. We have a learning cognition and an SEMH provision on site, and we haven't had permanent exclusion since 2015. But we do issue suspensions when we've exhausted all possibilities, and we do our very best to hold on to all of our children. Mm-hmm. But speaking of achieving and thriving, we're seeing quite early on that some children would benefit from a vocational pathway rather than academic. What actions are being taken to protect the well-being of teachers but also reduce exclusions and keep children in education?
Thanks very much, Dan. And what you've set out in terms of the work that you're doing is exactly the kind of approach we want to see in more schools across the country. So more specialist provision within mainstream schools, but so that children who have those additional needs get a more tailored and more targeted approach, including through changes to the curriculum. And I hope, Dan, if you haven't had the time already, just to take a look at what we've published yesterday and the intention behind all of that. I do understand the workload and wellbeing pressures that many of our staff are facing. It's why, we are investing more in our schools. But I know that lots of the pressures that staff face, those problems have already started to develop before children arrive in school. And the action we're taking on child poverty, on homelessness, on early family support services are all about really equipping children to succeed when they arrive at school and taking away some of that pressure from staff who all too often have had to step in and take on social work style roles when what they came into the profession to do was to focus on teaching quality. And I do recognise the point about a range of options for young people, strong vocational and academic options. We've already set out quite a lot in this area. We had a big curriculum and assessment review. We're going to bring forward a new national curriculum, and we're also bringing in new qualifications for young people on the vocational side, as well as the T levels, which are, for post-16, are working really well. Dan, good luck with what you're doing. Let's come to some other questions. In the Times today, they've looked at the provision of private equity-backed independent special schools. They've spoken with Kiran Gill, who's founder of an organisation called The Difference. I note these schools charge an average of £63,000 per child per year, and many, reports the paper, are backed by private equity. How comfortable or otherwise are you with that? Deeply uncomfortable, because we are spending money that should be meant for education on profit. And
what is the state cost? I read it's more like 20-something
it's
thousand.
It's about 25,
I've got 26 here,
yeah.
But 63. So they're making money.
It's more than double. They are. They're making a lot of money.
Well, can't you legislate against it?
We're going to do that.
How?
So we are going to bring in price bands where councils will be able to set bands for provision, and private providers will have to adapt to that. Now, I should say, for all the quality sometimes is variable in some of the sector you're talking about, there is some fantastic specialist provision out there, including in the independent sector, often run by charities or others that do a brilliant job. So we want to guard against any unintended consequence there, but we will put in place price bands so that there is more clarity and transparency around what councils are being asked to cover the cost of. And also investing more so that we've got more places closer to home for children so they don't have to travel. They often travel long distances to go to some of this provision, and that's what also costs money around transport. But even if you set aside the cost, it means that on an evening or a weekend when a child comes back in that hour-long taxi ride,
yes,
they don't have friends in their local community, and they often feel quite isolated. OK,
let's go to another call. We've got another 5 or so minutes with you, maybe 6. Joe in Wandsworth. Joe, you're through to the Secretary of State. Go ahead, Joe. Morning.
Yes, hello. Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Secretary of State.
Hello, Joe.
Hi. I understand that the pronouns guidance for primary schools is being reviewed and possibly expanded. Whilst you are giving £4 billion towards SEND pupils, I don't think that this comes under that. And I just wondered, when are teachers going to be allowed to teach children the core educational subjects and let medical professionals do what they do and let teachers do what they do? As you just sort of referred to, teaching quality is all important. And it seems that a teacher's remit is just being widened and widened and widened. The scope of what they have to do is just so broad now. How are they to focus
on what they have to do as teaching?
Yes.
Joe, let's hear from Joe, hold your fire there, Secretary of State.
I agree with that. I want teachers to focus on what matters most, which is raising standards, supporting children and delivering a brilliant education. I think Joe was asking about guidance around gender questioning children. I think
there was that guidance that came out earlier.
So we have already published our Keeping Children Safe in Education statutory guidance, and there is a section within that provides clarity to schools on how they should support children who are questioning their gender. It addresses the issue that Joe has just raised there as well.
Can a 5-year-old go to school and decide that he wants to be called by a girl's name and that he is a she? Are you comfortable with that?
We've been clear that in primary schools we need to tread with a lot of care.
That didn't actually answer the question, Secretary. Are you comfortable with that?
Well, this was usually where it involves a parent's decision to support their child in that way. So part of the balance here is that, of course, often parents will be supporting.
But the child could just tip up at school, couldn't he or she?
Well, we think this.
Did you know? Does everyone know at 5 whether they want to be a man or a woman?
That's part of what actually Hilary Cass said in her review, that in allowing children just to consider who they are, to behave in ways that might not be aligned with their sex, or their gender. Mm-hmm. So if a boy wants to wear dresses, we should just, if we allow that to work, children will experiment at different points. They will consider who they are. That just taking a watchful approach, not coming down too hard on that, actually reduces what we see in terms of children moving towards a more medicalised model. And the guidance that we've published, Dr. Hilary Cass has welcomed. She thinks it's the right approach in supporting children and their well-being. And I think it would be exceptionally rare for primary schools to be operating that. But I've also been clear that in anything in that space, unless there are very strong safeguarding reasons where a child is at risk of harm, parents should be involved in those important decisions.
Let's take a couple from the emails. Dan in Kent says, is the Secretary of State supportive of the NEU, National Education Union, suggesting teachers should have a 4-day week? Secretary of State.
I'm not, and if that means, I'm not quite sure what they're arguing for.
Well, I think the NEU said that 1 day should be at home, like lesson preparation and planning.
So schools will need to operate on a 5-day-a-week basis. That is important. Of course, schools themselves will often operate different models that will allow for teachers to work reduced hours or different numbers of days. That's pretty routine, particularly if you're supporting, I don't know, if a woman is returning to work, having had a baby and being on maternity leave.
Can't do a 4-day week, can they?
Well, sometimes what schools will do, if you're, for example, a maths teacher, you might be able to work 4 days because you're working pretty intensively in those 4 days. That's not that you then have a week working from home, but sometimes people will have different patterns of work.
Where do you spend the fifth day then if you're not at home?
Well, you often won't be paid for that other day if you're only committing to working a certain number of days or a certain number of hours.
Okay, all right, let's get to another call. Paul is in Croydon. I think your wife is your wife's a head teacher. What's your question to Bridget Phillipson? Paul.
Yeah, good morning. So it's regarding, I read in the document yesterday, attendance. Obviously, you want to focus on getting more kids back in school. Now, the problem is, my wife's got, in her school, she's got about 45% parents that are on free school dinners and, get support and stuff, which is much higher than national average. And what happens is, in terms of school holiday times, they obviously take their kids out of school to go on holiday those few days early to get cheaper prices.
Yes.
Now, she gets hammered by that by us Ofsted because it obviously affects the attendance figures.
Yep.
But what does the Secretary of State plan to do with that, to deal with these holiday companies that do that? Or is that going to get taken into consideration?
Well, of course, there is the fining system. Paul, thank you. Let's put that, because we've only got 2 minutes left with the Secretary of State. There is the fining system, but as you will be aware, sadly, parents can pay the fine and still be quids in.
Look, in a free economy, there's a limit to what you can do around how companies operate pricing and charging models. But I do think parents have a responsibility to be sending their children to school during term time and not taking term time holidays. We have put much more support, however, into supporting children around attendance where they're facing challenges around mental health or other pressures that families might be facing. But what we have seen around different schools is that even where you've got some schools with a similar kind of intake operating in a similar community, there can be differences in terms of the outcomes they get on attendance. So we're encouraging schools to work together, to use some of the data we're giving them to understand where there might be pressures on attendance and practical things that they can do. But I do recognise that lots and lots of schools face this issue around term time holidays.
All right, we've got a minute or so because I know you have to go to Cabinet. You will recall during the general election, you and I had interesting conversations about the decision as regards VAT on private school fees, and you said that there would be 6,500 new teachers by the end of this Parliament. How is recruitment going? What number are we at now, Secretary of State?
So it's around 2,300 more teachers in secondary and specialist provision and post-16. I say that because we aren't seeking to recruit so many in primary, because with the falling birth rate we don't need as many primary teachers. We're making good progress on that number around recruiting more teachers, particularly in areas like maths and science. We've seen big increases in people going into initial teacher training, but we're also doing a better job at retaining teachers. The numbers published most recently show the biggest kind of retention figure in terms of teachers that we've seen since around 2010. So it's working well. We've made progress, but yesterday we published our plan to deliver that 6.5. So you can go and take a look and tell me what you think.
You won't be aware of this, but LBC has covered early this morning more than 50 teachers are on strike in Gloucestershire over pupil violence. This is at the Tewkesbury Academy. Staff are saying they feel unsafe in their classrooms. There was a stabbing there in 2023. What will you do to get these teachers off the picket line and to assure staff, members of staff, whether they're school staff, administration staff, for their own individual safety, Secretary of State?
Yeah, absolutely. Every teacher, every member of staff should be safe at school and free from violence. And it is right that head teachers take action to protect their staff in those situations and use the powers that are available to them. I don't know the specifics of what's happened in this school. And obviously the school as the employer, or the trust as the employer, I don't know in this case, perhaps the local authority has a responsibility to manage that. I would hope that they can resolve this to the satisfaction of the staff, make sure they're safe and get the strike resolved.
Right. When are we going to see the Mandelson files? You are, of course, also Minister for Women and Equalities. When will we see those? Well,
we hope to be able to publish the first tranche of documents in the start of March. That's the commitment that we've given.
Why the delay?
We need to tread with care around the police investigation, that nothing we publish could compromise the work that they now have underway. There's a live police investigation. We do want there to be transparency. We do intend to publish documents. But
we'll get them next week?
I think the commitment was around the start of March. But I imagine, given events in recent days, we will need to check with the police that nothing we intend to publish would compromise their investigation.
And just lastly, without compromising any investigation or, of course, implying any guilt to Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor or Peter Mandelson, how important it is, again, without implying guilt, if there are allegations of sex trafficking or this behaviour, as Minister for Women and Equalities, we find out everything and the necessary action is taken. Bridget Phillipson.
Yeah, no one's above the law, and, these are potential crimes of the utmost seriousness, of the most horrific nature, and His Majesty the King has said that no one is above the law and supports the police investigation that's taking place at the moment.
Really appreciate your time today. I understand you're an incredibly busy person, and on behalf of everyone who's got children or grandchildren, I hope these reforms work. Thank you, Bridget Phillipson.
Thank you.
Appearing here on LBC at 9 o'clock, just after 9 News is next.
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Peter Mandelson's been released on bail hours after his arrest on suspicion of misconduct in public office. He's been accused of forwarding sensitive